Your victory will be our ultimate vindication. Your liberty will be our ultimate reward, and the unprecedented success of the United States of America will be my ultimate and absolute revenge. That's what I want. Success will be our revenge.
What we are doing right now is defending our country, defending those ideals of freedom, ideals of hard work, ideals of capitalism, ideas of free education, and to preserve humanity.
I look around and see these ordinary men and women who dreamed of a better country, left into a dirty prison as if they were worthless.
But I would start with your audiences to know that historical turnout in our country for presidential elections, about 57% voter turnout to 60%. And if you add the totals of 81 million supposed votes for Biden and 74 million for Trump, that would be a 95% turnout. That's unheard of. It's absurd. It's impossible.
The globalists, by trying to take away our national sovereignty, try to take away our national democracy, and ultimately try to take away our individual freedoms and liberties.
The entity, individual, and group with the most to gain from it is the more than likely culprit at some level. So who would that be?
It could be American, it could be the NATO, it could be all of those players who actually want to have a war with Russia.
So who benefits financially from blowing up Nord Stream?
Not the German economy.
Hallo zu einer neuen Ausgabe des USA-Reports. Wir sprechen heute über die Reden und die Interviews, die ich auf CPAC 2024 in Washington DC geführt haben durfte. Wir werden heute Ausschnitte von der Rede von Trump hören, wie er darüber spricht, was er ändern möchte, wenn er, wie er so schön gesagt hat, seine Rache führen kann, in das Amt des Präsidenten gewählt wird und was er da ändern möchte. Er möchte die illegalen Zuwanderung stoppen, indem er kriminelle Illegale sofort wieder nach Hause schickt, was wir in dem Fall von Laken Riley leider sehen mussten in den USA. Vielleicht habt ihr davon gehört. Das war der schlimme Zufall, wo ein krimineller, illegaler Einwanderer, der kurz zuvor in Athens in einer Polizeistation wegen Diebstahl festgenommen wurde und dann wegen Überfüllung wieder freigelassen wurde, hat kurz darauf dann die Krankenschwester, Studentin Laken Riley getötet und ist natürlich dann festgenommen worden. Aber dieser Fall bricht gerade alle Schlagzeilen und wird besprochen. Man hat auch einen Laken Riley Act nun verabschiedet in den US-Kongress, der verspricht, dass illegale Einwanderer, die in den USA eine Straftat begehen, sofort ausgewiesen werden sollen. Ob das natürlich jetzt durchgeht, ist eine andere Frage, aber es ist schon mal ein guter Ansatz. Weiterhin spricht Trump darüber, wie man versucht, ihn durch Lawfare von seiner Präsidentschaftskandidatur abzulenken und ihn mit immensen und ominös hohen Strafen vor Gericht lahmlegen zu können, weil jeder weiß natürlich, eine Präsidentschaftskandidatur ist sehr, sehr kostenspielig und man versucht, ihn somit eindämmen zu können. Der Versuch, ihn ganz von den Wahlzetteln in Colorado streichen zu lassen, ist gescheitert. Der Supreme Court, das Verfassungsgericht, hat dort Trump seinen Anwälten zugestimmt, dass das gegen die Konstitution ist, gegen die Verfassung spricht und deswegen hat Trump weiterhin die Chance, in Colorado auf den Wahlzettel zu stehen.
Because the fact is, Joe Biden is a threat to democracy. He really is a threat to democracy. I stand before you today not only as your past and hopefully future president, but as a proud political dissident. I am a dissident. Remember this, I've been indicted more than Alphonse Capone, Mr. President. Do you know who that is? Even the president just said, I do. Scarface, Al Capone. If he had dinner with you and he didn't like the smile in your face, he thought you were mocking him by smiling, you would be dead before you got home and said hello to your wife. And Alphonse Capone, I got indicted 4 times by this gang of thugs for nothing. Or, as I say respectfully to the people from foreign countries, for bullshit. Thank you very much. Thank you. Now, it's very dangerous. It's very dangerous what's going on. They've weaponized government. They've weaponized the DOJ, the FBI. We've never had anything like this in this country, and it's a phenomenon that's taken place many times, but in third world countries and in banana republics, not in the United States of America. So it's very dangerous, and they are indeed a threat to democracy. And I'm here to unleash this captive nation from Joe Biden and his gang of very bad people, very sick people, smart people, intelligent people, but they're hell-bent on the destruction of American freedom. It's happening in our country, and it's so... I would do well in a lot of places because it's common sense. Remember, not conservative, it's common sense. I'm conservative, but the words are common sense. Our country is run by people that are destroying it. We're not going to let it happen again. We're going to have a great military. We're going to have a great... Everything in our country is going to function properly again. It's going to function well. We're going to be respected all over the world. We're going to be respected like we've never been respected before. And it won't take long. It's like Orban said from Hungary, put Trump back in, and the whole world is going to be fixed. He said that very strongly. Put Trump back in. What do you do? They said, what do you do, sir? What do you do? The world is blowing up. He said, it's a very simple solution. Put President Trump back in office. It will all be... The first and most urgent action when we win will be the sealing of the border, stopping the invasion, drill, baby, drill. Send Joe Biden's illegal aliens back home. We'll do all of those things, and we're going to have to do them fast because no country can sustain what's happening in our country. Your victory will be our ultimate vindication. Your liberty will be our ultimate reward, and the unprecedented success of the United States of America will be my ultimate and absolute revenge. That's what I want. Success will be our revenge.
Des Weiteren hören wir auch Ausschnitt einer Rede von Eduardo Bolsonaro, der Sohn des ehemaligen Präsidenten Jair Bolsonaro von Brasilien. In seiner Rede spricht er darüber, wie Brasilien, das zuvor ein sehr freies und demokratisches Land war, unter Lula nun mehr und mehr zu einer kommunistischen Diktatur mit Verfolgung von politischen Gegnern und Inhaftierung von politischen Gegnern sich gewandelt hat. Lasst uns einfach mal reinhören.
I'll tell you how a country loses its freedom. I look around and see these ordinary men and women who dreamed of a better country, left into a dirty prison as if they were worthless than an animal. And for those who think I'm exaggerating, I will mention a few simple examples. You can take a look at the images. Felipe Martins, the President Bolsonaro's international advisor, like Jared Kushner, a brilliant young man in his studies with a promising future, imprisoned by a court of exception, accused of a coup d'etat never attempted or planned, and without hope of minimally fair treatment, as due process and broad defense no longer exist in Brazil. Silvinei Vasquez, former chief of police during my father's administration, the chief who most seized the drugs in Brazil. Eduardo Naime, chief of police, who was injured during the protests on January 8th while working during his holidays. And also lawyers, veterinarians, journalists, comedians, pastors, a sign language interpreter, a gospel singer, a homeless, an individual diagnosed with a high degree of autism, all of them imprisoned and accused of coup. These people are now receiving sentences of 17 years in jail. And Clezão, salesman, died inside prison as waiting trial for almost 1 year. And just like them, almost 2,000 people were arrested in a single day in Brazil. Elderly, pregnant women, and even children accused of being terrorists, of having attempted an armed coup, even though not a single weapon was seized. The totalitarian judicial system created the narrative with the help of the legacy media that these ordinary people were a threat to Brazilian state. And this climate of persecution expanded censoring and hunting critics of the current government. And under the excuse of preserving democracy that does not exist anymore, these selfless tyrants crush political opposition.
Auch hören wir einen Ausschnitt aus der Rede von Matt Gaetz, einem Kongressabgeordneten aus Florida, der darüber spricht, wie er den Kampf gegen Demokraten im Kongress, aber auch den Kampf von den sogenannten Rhinos führen möchte. Dazu braucht er natürlich die Unterstützung der Wählerschaft und des amerikanischen Volkes, we the people. Aber lasst uns doch einfach hören, was er so zu sagen.
You see, when I offer these critiques that include the conduct of some fellow Republicans, I catch a lot of heat. Don't get me wrong, I'd prefer to just fight the Democrats. But if the Republicans are going to dress up like Democrats in drag, then I will lead the fight against them too. I'm here to fight for you. It's the people's house, after all. Last time I checked, the people hate Congress. We have a lower approval rating than the IRS. So I don't give a rip if they boo me on the floor, if they hate me and their corrupt little souls, and they can even try to expel me on bullshit if they want. But this is a movement that the Uniparty cannot kill. They're trying with President Trump, and even the MSNBC resistance libs admit that he grows stronger by the day. Well, you know what? In the MAGA movement, at CPAC, my friends Matt and Mercy Schlapp, all of you, we are all growing stronger. And I am the strongest fighting these battles with you in my corner. I appreciate your prayers and your hopes and your love, and I will never stop fighting for you. God bless you. God bless this great country. Let's go get them!
In der nächsten Rede hören wir Vivek Ramaswamy.
We fight for the truth. We stand up for the truth. That's who we are. That's what won us the American Revolution 250 years ago. And you know what our founding fathers would say if they were alive today? Founding fathers would say that you still have another 250 years and then some still left. But we're going to have to step up and seize it for ourselves, just like our founding fathers did the first time around in 1776. You know, I ran for president. I'm 38 years old. People said that was a little young to run for president. Thomas Jefferson, he was 33 when he wrote the Declaration of Independence. Think about that. He invented the swivel chair while he was at it. This was a guy who was fluent in 7 languages, could write in 2 of them. He was a guy who wrote, I tell this to students when I talk to them, he wrote 16,000 letters over the course of his life. And so I see high school students, they're like, oh, 16,000 letters, that's like, 4,000 words. Okay, I could probably do that. No. He wrote 16,000 letters, essays over the course of his life. When he sat down to write the Declaration of Independence, he felt like he was going to sit there for a long time. He invented the swivel chair. The modern swivel chair that we sit in today was invented by Thomas Jefferson, one of our founding fathers. He invented the polygraph test. These were the guys who actually set this country into motion. What will we say today? You can't do that. You're not an expert. You didn't get a 4-year college degree. Shut up, sit down, do as you're told. Not our founding fathers. These were the pioneers, the explorers, the unafraid, the people who would not be stopped by somebody else telling them what they can and cannot do. It's not just Thomas Jefferson. Every signer of that Declaration of Independence, it's the same story. Benjamin Franklin invented musical instruments used by Mozart, by Beethoven. He invented the Franklin stove, one of the leading discoveries in thermodynamics. He used to actually invent the Franklin stove, which was a great invention in his day, the lightning rod, the bifocal spectacle, all invented by a guy who actually co-signed the Declaration of Independence. Robert Livingston, he was an ambassador to France, while as a side hobby, along with Robert Fulton, invented the steamship, one of the key components of the Industrial Revolution. Robert Sherman actually was a guy who was a self-trained attorney. He didn't go to law school. He taught himself. He still practiced law, ultimately became one of the most successful attorneys before then joining the governing body of Yale University to help a next generation get educated like him. We miss that in our country today. There was something in the water back then, something in the culture that said that you don't have to respect the boundaries that somebody tells you that you occupy because of your race or your gender or your skin color or because of the degree that you receive. No, you can achieve anything you ever set your mind to with your own hard work and commitment and dedication and ambition and curiosity. That was the founding spirit of this country. That's what our founding fathers would tell us if they were here today.
CPAC goes international. Nigel Farage, ein bekannter Brexit-Politiker und Abgeordneter im Europäischen Parlament, spricht vor der Audience in CPAC und spricht natürlich den internationalen Wunsch darauf an, gegen die Globalisten zu kämpfen. Ihm ist es wichtig, dass die Menschen verstehen, dass internationale Vereinbarungen und Freundschaften wichtig sind, aber es ist trotzdem auch wichtig, dass man den Sinn der Souveränität und der nationalistischen oder des Nationalgedankens und Wunsches eines souveränen Staates nicht ganz vergisst. Und dass die Ironie darin besteht, dass die Globalisten versucht haben, den ganzen Souveränitäts- und Nationalstolz zu zerstören und hat somit eine große Bewegung geschaffen. Und diese Bewegung findet man in MAGA, Make America Great Again, aber auch in Europa, die jetzt immer mehr wächst, dass man zurück zu Nationalstaaten gehen möchte.
So for me to be here, suddenly, I'm not alone. CPAC has become an international movement. The globalists, by trying to take away our national sovereignty, try to take away our national democracy, and ultimately try to take away our individual freedoms and liberties, have forced us all together into this new movement in the most remarkable way. And it is the most amazing testament to Matt, Mercedes Schlapp, the CPAC team, that it's through these meetings here, it's through the energy and enthusiasm of CPAC that this new international movement has come together. We all want the same things. We want international cooperation. We want trade, we want peace, we want common sense, but we want it within the framework of the nation state, not within the framework of the European Union or the United Nations or the increasingly appalling World Health Organization. No, thank you.
Wir hören Interviews mit Catalina Stuppe. Sie ist eine Sprecherin von Moms for Liberty und sie spricht in dem Interview, das ich mit ihr führen durfte, über den Kampf, den Eltern in Amerika gerade führen, für die traditionellen Werte, die Werte der Freiheit, aber auch die Werte vom Spirituellen, vom Christentum, vom Glauben.
Hello, my name is Catalina Stuppe. I am the National Director of Moms for Liberty. My organization is a non-profit organization that is defending parental rights at all levels of government. We are against any Marxist ideologies, critical race theory, gender ideologies, or anything that is harming our kids. We are defending the education of our children, defending the family institution, defending the American values.
Thank you. Can you tell us a little bit about your background, where you're from? Why are you fighting for American liberty?
I'm originally from Colombia, and I am a mom of 4, and I saw the indoctrinations firsthand. So I am just defending what is fundamental for every parent, to take control over our children and direct the education, direct the health, direct the traditions, the morality and religion of our children.
So, what signs do you see in America who reminds you about Colombia and what went wrong, and what do you think could help the American people to understand, to stand up now?
Well, the United States is an example for the world because it was a strong country created based on biblical values and hard work and with a huge vision and to work together each other. So when they want to start communism in a country, they start taking media, they start taking education. So what we are doing right now is defending our country, defending those ideals of freedom, ideals of hard work, ideals of capitalism, ideas of free education, and to preserve humanity. because it's outrageous that they are using our tax dollars to indoctrinate our children, to change the gender of our children, or to change the nature of our children, to use and weaponize the government institution against parents or against citizens of the United States. And worst of all, they are using our tax dollars to manipulate civilization.
So, when you could announce something to the American people and the people in Europe, what do you think is most important what parents can do now to stop this wheel of evil, what is coming to them?
Well, this is a great question because, as you can see, this movement of gender ideologies and transhumanism is global. It's happening in every country. And what I can say to the parents is don't wait until a politician is going to sell this. You can start from your home, from the dinner table. You can start actually teaching your children to live in liberty, to defend their rights. You have to teach the U.S. Constitution, or in that case, the ideals of your country that is preserving their rights, their fundamental rights to free speech, to defend themselves, to protect themselves. So if you know your rights, you can defend your rights. And if you're willing to live in liberty, you need to defend your freedoms. So you need a spiritual guidance too. Because some of the children, they can name you all the positions in sex, and they do not have skills. They do not know the 10 Commandments. They do not know so many basic things that every human being needs in their life.
In einem anderen Interview konnten wir mit David Clements sprechen. Er ist ein ehemaliger Professor für Recht und er hat den Election Fraud mit am meisten verteidigt. Er spricht in unserem Interview darüber, wie einfach es ist zu sehen, dass 2020 ein Election Fraud, ein Wahlbetrug stattgefunden hat, einfach an den Zahlen.
Hi, I'm Dave Clements. I'm a former law professor here in the United States and a former prosecutor. So I'm here with what's your name?
Vicky.
Vicky, and she's got some questions for me about our elections here in America, and I'm ready to hear them.
Okay, thank you for having you on our show. So you are very active in the fight for election rights and fair elections, and we all heard about that the election of 2020 was a fraud, or they did fraud on that. So what is your evidence, or how do you explain that this was factual?
Well, the easiest way to get a detailed account is to watch a documentary I put out, which is called Let My People Go, and it really breaks down almost every one of the subversions that we have of our system. But I would start with your audience just to know that historical turnout in our country for presidential elections, about 57% voter turnout to 60%. And if you add the totals of 81 million supposed votes for Biden and 74 million for Trump, that would be a 95% turnout. That's unheard of. It's absurd. It's impossible. So you've got to look for deviations. And so that's what I've done. We look at behavioral deviations. We look at deviations of law, math, and science. The most compelling record that I've looked at personally is this thing called a cast vote record summary. It basically gives you a replay of how the votes were cast on election night. There have been over 1,000 counties, basically 1/3 of the counties in America, where we've analyzed these records, and we're finding, we're in an airport here, an impossible arrangement of votes. So we're seeing a predetermined set point and a linear drive towards that set point, and it violates this thing called the law of large numbers. And so that's probably the most powerful evidence for machine manipulation. And this isn't just a question of voter fraud. This is systemic election fraud. So that's one example of many. But I only have so much time before I get on this plane.
So what is your prediction for the upcoming wall this year? Do you think they're going to try it again with
Yeah, they're going to double down. It'll be worse. But we're at a much more critical stage because we had so many people asleep to just how bad it was. Even though I understand the systems clearly now, 2020, I didn't know. I didn't know it was this bad. So tyrants aren't going to let go of the slave trade, and they're going to require us to do our part to fight them. And if we don't, then we're going to see more Joe Biden. But I'm hopeful. But I think it's going to get worse before it gets better.
And you are also very active for fighting for the J6ers. And do you have an idea how America can pay them back, like when they finally get out, because they are in prison? Most of them didn't even see a judge yet. People in Germany don't even know that. And so how do you think America can solve that problem of...
It's tied to the elections. There's only one candidate that's running that has stated that he would pardon the J6 prisoners, and that's Donald Trump. And so unless we get him into the White House, you're not going to see those pardons. You're going to see more corruption. There were roughly 1 million people at the Capitol. Some say more. And of those 1 million, we've had over 1,200 families that have had their doors kicked in, been run through. We've got probably 300 U.S. citizens that are incarcerated right now. Those numbers change and fluctuate. We've seen sentences that are in excess of 20 years. People like Jake Lang, Ryan Samsel, John Mellis have been in for over 3 years, still waiting for trial. And so, yeah, I don't separate it from the elections. If we solve that, we'll solve the other problem.
In dem Interview mit Runstead, einem sitzenden Senator von Michigan, reden wir speziell über Lawfare. Was ist Lawfare? Wie wird sie ausgeführt und wie sieht man das bei Trump? Und er spricht auch über seine Erfahrungen mit den J6.
My name is Jim Runstead, a state senator in the state of Michigan.
Hello, Mr. Senator. So, this year is a very important year for the American history because it's an election year, and you will fight in America right now the most important war what I think you ever fight. It's communism or socialistic Marxism against freedom, capitalism, and the American dream. Do you think that's the right idea?
That is the right idea, and unfortunately what's been happening in Michigan, as has been happening in Europe for a much longer period of time, the state is continuing to grow and grow and grow, and they're they're taking the rights of the citizenry. And the United States has always been the bastion of freedom, the place where when other countries were going into dictatorship, people could flee to the United States. We were the backstop. All of Europe, whatever was happening, they could come here for freedom and liberty. Unfortunately, in Michigan, we are now, in the state of the United States, we are now undergoing that transition of Marxism that has taken over so much of the Western world, and it's absolutely devastating. What's happening here in particular are the courts are being used to go after anybody who objects to the big, deep state. And you see that with President Trump. They're filing case after case in all these states where they know they have a friendly prosecutor, they'll put him in a jurisdiction in an inner city where he's unpopular, so they know they've got a tainted jury that they can go after him. If you can imagine in Germany, each one of the little states could file criminal charges and civil charges against the prime minister or the chancellor and just rip them down in an election. So that you could have hundreds and hundreds of charges all trumped up in every little province of Germany to charge this person with, and they're spending all their time defending themselves, millions and millions of dollars. That's what's happening in the United States to the former President Trump, but also it's happening across the spectrum, especially in these liberal states where the attorney generals are going after anybody who complains about election law. If you try to investigate election law, they're charging you with felonies. And a lot of times it's trumped up stuff, but it costs you so much money in the United States to defend yourself that you go bankrupt. And so then everybody else says, well, I'm not going to do that. You saw these people going bankrupt. So it's to force you to be quiet, to not say anything, to go along. Pure Marxism. And yeah, our liberties are really on the line today.
So, what can you as a senator do? Like, how can do you have any veto rights, or are you trying to implement other laws to fight those unlawful lawfare, what the liberals try to produce right now?
I would say in my case, and what most elected officials can do that object to this, because a lot of them are supporting this. In the Democrat Party, I have not heard a single Democrat office holder down to the dog catcher up to the president that complains about this. They like it. They don't care about the Constitution. They don't care about individual liberty. They don't care about the law. They want power and control. So you're not going to find one Democrat office holder of the hundreds of thousands in the United States who will complain about this. They don't care. I think that they said all Republican office holders need to be thrown to the gulag for 25 years for nothing other than they're Republicans. I think that they would all support that. The Republicans would never support this stuff. We would think, we're not going to have people thrown in jail if we disagree with them, because that you lose rule of law. Eventually that happens to everybody. But on the Democrat Party, they're all on board of having this happen. The other thing they're all on board that's is rapidly changing the United States is they're bringing in millions and millions and millions of people illegally from all over the world. And the game plan there is you have somebody that's making $1 or $2 a day in some part in the third world. They come here, they let them across the border, then they give them every benefit in the world. So if you don't know anything, you don't speak the language, you have the same culture, religion, anything, and all you know is the Democrat's going to give me everything, I vote for the Democrat, because what they want to do is, once they get all these many, many more millions in, they want to amnesty them, meaning that they can now vote. And that is the entire goal, get millions and millions and millions. They don't care about the country. This is going to cost trillions of dollars to the United States. We have people, there's not housing for them now. So they're not housing Americans. They're putting the illegals in $500-800 a night hotels, 5-star hotels. Now, would you vote for somebody who's putting you in a 5-star hotel when you came from a tent in in the middle of the desert? Now you get everything under the sun. Of course they're going to vote for them. And again, the same thing is to destroy the rule of law. It's to bankrupt the country. It's to divide the country so that you can pit one group against another. That's what's happening in Europe. I know same thing's happening there. They do not want people to be able to look at the string pullers at the top, and they want everyone fighting at the bottom. So they're doing that in Germany, they're doing that in the United States, and you bring up people that don't have any loyalty to the country, don't know anything about the country, give them all the benefits, say vote for me, get the power, and then you crush everybody else.
Das Interview, was ich mit Ivan Raiklin führen konnte, ist in einer Sondersendung geplant und wird vollständig mit deutschen Untertiteln versehen. Aber ich möchte euch natürlich nicht die besten Ausschnitte vorenthalten. Deswegen könnt ihr jetzt schon in diesem USA-Report einen kurzen Ausschnitt des Interviews sehen.
So I always say this, when we back up and look at this thing globally from the global deep state, the interests of China is to become the world's hegemon. And the way that they can do that is to work with Russia to convince Russia that if they work together, if they put down the U.S., they can not only put the United States in the second position globally, which I think at this point they've done, but also one more notch down, which is in the interest of Russia. This ties back to your original question of NATO expansion and Russia's stance on it. So that's when Russia also doesn't have enough power to retake over Ukraine, but they have enough power and influence over two regions, just like you saw in Georgia, with Ossetia, South Ossetia, and Abkhazia, but with Donetsk and Lugansk in eastern Ukraine, so that Ukraine, just like Georgia tried, cannot do what's known as the Membership Action Plan to enter NATO. It's Russia asserting its power and influence within the sphere of its periphery to push back against NATO to protect its own national sovereignty and interests within the power that they have, which is blocking NATO expansion and Ukraine entering NATO. So while I was on the Ukraine crisis team as an analyst, briefing our national command authority, in my personal time off of work duty, I was doing my own personal research. And in that personal research, I noticed, I was watching Russian media, Ukraine media, because I'm fluent in Russian. I read and understand Ukrainian. So as I'm following along, I see John Brennan doing his coup in Ukraine, right? The entity, individual, and group with the most to gain from it is the more than likely culprit at some level. So who would that be?
It could be American, it could be the NATO, it could be all of those players who actually want to have a war with Russia.
So who benefits financially from blowing up Nord Stream?
Not the German economy.
Okay. So then if that stream of revenue and energy is stopped coming from Russia, where does Germany have to
they have to buy.
obtain?
Yeah, they have to buy your expensive.
LNG?
Yeah.
Liquid natural gas? So then who benefits?
America.
So there might be your answer.
Yes. But it's interesting to hear that from an American citizen, because a lot of people watch those sessions at the UN where they were talking about it. And in my opinion, or what is your opinion about this whole Russian NATO debacle what we right now have? Because NATO lost its purpose after stopping having the Cold War.
After the Warsaw Pact collapsed.
Yeah.
I agree. So if you look at the foundational documents on why NATO was created, it was to counter the Soviet Union and the Warsaw Pact. When the Warsaw Pact and the Soviet Union collapsed in 1990 into 1991, it begs the question, why does NATO still remain and exist? And when Vladimir Putin had his interview with Tucker Carlson, he went into a little bit of history, for the first 30 minutes of the interview, and it really covered that. But more important is that in the mid-90s, the NATO started to expand rather than cease to exist.
Yep.
And while Russia was in its most weak state in the 1990s, in the mid part of the 1990s, that's when the NATO expansion started to escalate. And then as it continued, NATO continued to expand. I believe we're at 31 nations at this point.
Yeah, and now we have even Finland wanted to join.
And so when Russia sees that and sees the continuous expansion into not only the Warsaw Pact countries, but then even further than that, the former Soviet republics, that starts to become a national security concern for Russia.
Das große Thema ist die Präsidentschaftswahl 2024 im November. Das Zugpferd der Republikanischen Partei, der America First Bewegung, ist natürlich Donald Trump. Donald Trump spricht sehr viel darüber, was er ändern möchte. Er sieht seinen Wahlkampf mehr als Rache an den Globalisten und an den marxistisch-leninistischen und sozialistischen Demokraten, wie er sie gerne nennt, aber auch eine Chance für das amerikanische Volk heilen zu können. Er verspricht sehr viel. Er spricht darüber, was er alles ändern möchte. 99% von dem, was er verspricht, finde ich, das ist jetzt meine Meinung, sehr gut, wie zum Beispiel Border Crisis Stopping, der Massenzufuhr von Illegalen, Close the Border, dann natürlich das Energieregime zu zerstören, dass Amerika wieder eigenständige Energie- und Stromversorgung zuführen kann. Wo ich am meisten Probleme habe, ist, dass Trump immer noch Warp Street sehr stark verteidigt und immer noch sagt, das war eines seiner glorreichen Taten in seiner Präsidentschaft 2016 bis 2020. Finde ich sehr schwierig, besonders weil wir jetzt auch sehen, was die Covid-Impfung angestellt hat mit den ganzen Impfschäden, wie sie zur Zwangsimpfung geworden ist, wie viele Service-Member aus dem Militär, aber auch aus der Polizei, auch im medizinischen Bereich ihre Arbeit verloren haben, weil sie sich nicht haben impfen lassen. Oder viele haben sich impfen lassen, weil sie Angst hatten um ihre Existenz, um ihre Familie ernähren zu können. Das sieht Trump immer noch nicht als ein Problem. Ob er es ändern wird, weiß ich nicht. Hoffen wir es. Trump ist der Kandidat für die Konservativen. Er hat die Primaries gewonnen. Er ist das Zugpferd. Er wird für die Republikanische Partei antreten. Viele Rhinos werden jetzt eine Kehrtwende machen und ihn unterstützen. Das sieht man jetzt schon. Nikki Haley hat versagt, aber wurde natürlich von den konservativen Establishment unterstützt. Diese kehren jetzt gerade ihre Seite und wenden sich Trump zu. Wir werden sehen, wie es weiterhin ausgeht und ich hoffe, ihr schaltet beim nächsten Mal wieder ein beim USA-Report, wenn es darum geht, das volle Interview mit Ivan Raiklin zu veröffentlichen, aber auch, und da bin ich sehr gespannt drauf, wie das wird, eine Sondersendung aus Mar-a-Lago, wo General Flynn seinen Dokumentarfilm in einer Filmpremiere zeigt und ich habe die Chance, exklusiv dort sein zu können und von dort aus zu berichten. Also, vielen Dank für eure Aufmerksamkeit. Ich hoffe, ihr schaltet beim nächsten Mal wieder ein, wenn es heißt USA Report.